Life has returned to normal in New Zealand. It locked down at around the same time as us, but it has now been declared virus-free. What can we learn from its experience? Well, one of the architects of the strategy and an advisor to the New Zealand government is Michael Baker, Professor of Public Health at the University of Otago, Wellington. Welcome, Professor Baker. What would you say is the key to the achievement in New Zealand?
Well, greetings from New Zealand. I think the key is good science and good leadership and acting decisively. That made all the difference in New Zealand.
Acting decisively in locking down and closing the borders, because you did that even before the lockdown within the country came in.
Yeah, the borders had never been fully closed, but they were restricted to New Zealanders returning, and we've had a quarantine system, so 14 days, and very small numbers now crossing the borders. So the three things in New Zealand: managing the borders, contact tracing, and obviously with a lot of testing to go with that, and then an intense lockdown to basically extinguish almost all chains of transmission.
So as you have looked at different approaches in other parts of the world and death tolls that have been, very bad in some parts of the world, including in this country, what have your reflections been? Have you watched a lot of that and thought, I would never have gone down that route?
Well, I'm shocked at the failure of the Western world to assess this risk properly and act accordingly. I mean, we were taking our leads from the US and the UK, as we usually do, and the World Health Organization, and the advice was wrong, basically. And in the end, just in the nick of time, we looked to Asia and we followed their models, which was, again, treating this more like a SARS virus and going for elimination, and less like influenza where you can't contain it. So that was the difference.
And when you had that conversation early on with government leaders, with people like the Prime Minister, I mean, I imagine there was the same juggling that there would be everywhere in the world where they're trying to weigh up the impact on the economy.
Well, I think in New Zealand, I don't think they've seen that I think they see that as a false dichotomy, because public health and the economy are served by the same decisive measures. I think the problem was we had the influenza pandemic plan, which is really a mitigation approach. So we had to turn that on its head. And instead of gradually increasing your controls as the pandemic gets worse, you throw everything at the pandemic at the beginning and you extinguish it. And that's what they did in mainland China, and that's what we did in New Zealand, and it works. And I am actually really surprised that the UK is not doing the same thing. You have all the elements in place to eliminate the virus. You're managing your borders, your experience now with lockdown, you're doing testing and contact tracing. You could eliminate this virus quite rapidly.
How would you eliminate it now?
Well, a key measure would be a very intense lockdown for 4 to 6 weeks, probably maybe a little longer. And then as you come out of that lockdown, you basically identify your cases, test them, contact trace them, and you are already managing your borders. So you have all the elements in place to do this.
So you support the quarantine measures that have come in now, even though they didn't exist before. Does it still make sense to you to have it in place now?
Well, only if you're pursuing elimination. Otherwise, I mean, many of the people coming to the UK now are coming from countries with a lower rate than the UK. So it seems quite odd to do that without all the other measures in place, without an elimination goal.
Professor Michael Baker, thank you very much.